You consider yourself a good reader of people. You notice things. You pick up on tone, on energy, on the gap between what someone says and how they say it. You've always trusted that instinct, and mostly, it has served you well. You've avoided obvious trouble. You've built decent working relationships. You've kept yourself out of the worst of it. And yet, there is someone in your professional orbit right now who has been operating against your interests carefully, patiently, without a single raised voice or visible act of aggression, and you have not seen it clearly, not because your instincts failed, because what they are doing was specifically designed to stay below the threshold of your instincts. The most effective operators in any workplace are the ones who never look like operators at all. My name is Zara, and today I'm showing you exactly what to look for before it costs you something you can't recover. Picture someone, 6 weeks into a new role, still mapping the terrain: who holds informal authority, who the real decision makers are, which relationships matter and which are purely transactional. In that early uncertainty, one colleague stands out as genuinely helpful. Ask good questions. Share context that nobody else thought to offer. Remember small details. Feels, in the particular way that some people do, like a safe point of contact in an unfamiliar environment. So when that colleague asks, over coffee, how the onboarding is going, how the workload is feeling, whether the pace is what was expected, this person is honest, not recklessly honest. Just the normal honesty of someone who has decided another person is trustworthy. 3 weeks later, in a meeting with leadership, a comment surfaces about this person's adjustment to the role. The phrasing is measured, clinical, framed as concern. It doesn't name a source. But the specific language, the particular detail about one area of struggle could only have come from one conversation. There was no confrontation, no visible betrayal, no dramatic moment to point to and say, that's when it happened, just a private confidence, quietly repurposed, used once, at the right moment, in exactly the right room. The question this person is left asking is, how did I not see that coming? That is still the wrong question. The right one is, what are the observable signals that distinguish a strategic operator from a genuine colleague, and why are those signals so consistently easy to miss? There are 4 operating patterns that repeat across every workplace, in every industry, at every level. They are not dramatic. They do not announce themselves. That is precisely why they work. Pattern number 1, the collector. The collector operates through generosity. They share credit in public, remember the details that matter to you, offer help before you ask for it, and create a consistent impression of warmth and reliability. The generosity feels genuine because in most individual moments, it is indistinguishable from genuine generosity. Here is the mechanism. Every favor extended is a social deposit. Every public acknowledgement, every piece of timely information, every moment of visible support, these create an obligation in the receiver that is not consciously registered, but is deeply felt. The reciprocity norm is one of the most durable forces in human social behavior. When someone has consistently given to you, refusing them or even failing to support them when the moment arrives produces a discomfort that most people will do almost anything to avoid. The collector doesn't call in debts directly. They don't need to. They simply arrive at a moment where your silence, your endorsement, or your backing matters, and the accumulated weight of their generosity does the work. You comply without fully understanding why, and the transaction is complete before you register it happened. The collector's generosity is real. The accounting behind it is invisible. And the invoice arrives at exactly the moment you can least afford to pay it. Pattern number 2. The narrator. The narrator does not lead projects. They do not volunteer for difficult problems or position themselves at the center of operational work. What they do with precision and consistency is control the description of what happened after the work is done. The mechanism, organizational memory, is not built from data. It is built from stories. The meeting recap, the leadership summary, the hallway debrief after a difficult quarter, these are where the permanent record of who did what, who handled pressure well, and who created problems actually gets written. The person who produces that record holds more long-term influence than the person who delivered the underlying work. The narrator has understood this completely. They write the follow-up email. They give the composed summary to the senior leader who wasn't in the room. They frame the outcome in language that positions their presence as central and other people's contributions as supporting detail or, when useful, as the source of the complications. You built the thing. They described it. And in 6 months, when the organization remembers that project, they will remember the description. In most organizations, the person who controls the narrative about the work holds more career capital than the person who did it. Pattern number 3. The chameleon. The chameleon is the most immediately recognizable pattern once you know what to look for. This is the person who is visibly different depending on who is present. Engaged, articulate, and collaborative when leadership is in the room. Passive, subtly dismissive, or territorially quiet in peer settings where no one with formal authority is watching. The mechanism is simple. They are allocating social effort based on return on investment. Relationships with people who cannot advance their position receive minimal maintenance. Relationships with people who can are managed with care and consistency. The observable tell is the inconsistency itself, and specifically the pattern of when it appears. If someone's behavior toward you shifts measurably when a senior leader enters or leaves a conversation, you are watching allocation, not personality variation. Someone who treats people differently based on who is watching is showing you their actual operating system, not a bad day. Pattern number 4. The information architect. This is the subtlest pattern and the most damaging over time. The information architect controls what you know, and specifically, what you know slightly incorrectly. The mechanism. They provide you with information that is nearly accurate. A deadline that is slightly shorter than the actual one. A meeting room that was changed after they told you the original. A detail about a project requirement that reflects an earlier version of the brief. The inaccuracy is small enough to be plausibly attributed to miscommunication. But the effect you arriving slightly unprepared, slightly behind, slightly less composed than you would otherwise be is consistent. And it is consistently visible to exactly the people whose perception of you matters most. Miscommunication happens. Every workplace has noise. What distinguishes the information architect is the pattern. The errors are small, they always disadvantage you, and they always seem to surface at high visibility moments. The most dangerous person in your professional environment is not the one who attacks you directly. It is the one who hands you slightly wrong information and watches you walk into the room with it. Here is what makes all of this harder than it should be. Your own perception is working against you. The halo effect, the cognitive tendency to filter out evidence that contradicts your existing categorization of a person, means that once you've decided someone is trustworthy, you will unconsciously discount the signals that suggest otherwise. You're not failing to notice. You are noticing and then explaining it away, because the alternative requires revising a relationship you've already invested in. And when you finally do name what you're observing to a colleague, to a manager, to HR, you will frequently encounter a response that reframes the conversation around your perception rather than their behavior. Suddenly, the topic is whether you are being fair, whether you are misreading the situation, whether you have a problem with this person. The cognitive work of defending your own observation is exhausting enough that many people abandon the argument entirely. That abandonment is not weakness. It is the predictable outcome of a dynamic specifically designed to produce it. Here is what the endgame of this looks like when it runs to completion. You do not get fired. You get quieter. You get more careful. You get smaller. You stop volunteering the ideas that would have built your visibility. You stop trusting the relationships that could have protected you. You become, over time, a less legible version of yourself, and the person who produced that outcome expresses polite concern and steps into the space your retreat created. They never needed you gone. They just needed you diminished. And diminishment is the slowest, cleanest career intervention there is. The reframe is this: you are not trying to identify bad people. You are trying to identify misaligned operating systems and then adjust how much access those systems have to the information and territory that matters to you. This is not paranoia, it is pattern literacy. And pattern literacy is a learnable skill. Here is what it looks like in practice. Move number 1. Audit the direction of information flow in your key relationships this week. Sit with each significant professional relationship and ask a single diagnostic question. Does information flow in both directions, or primarily in one? Genuine colleagues exchange vulnerability, uncertainty, and honest assessment with some symmetry. Operators extract. They ask the questions that invite your disclosure while offering very little of their own. They are warm and present when you are talking, and notably vague when the direction reverses. You are not looking for perfect reciprocity. That's not how relationships work. You are looking for a consistent pattern where one person always knows more about the other than the other knows about them. That asymmetry is a signal. Adjust what you share accordingly, without changing your behavior toward them in any way that signals the adjustment. Move number 2. Verify consequential information independently before acting on it. This one is simple and immediately implementable. When information arrives from someone whose pattern you are not yet certain of, a deadline, a meeting detail, a requirement for a deliverable, verify it through a second source before building your preparation around it. Not because you are accusing anyone of anything. Because consequential information should always be confirmed, and establishing that habit protects you from the information architect without requiring you to name the dynamic at all. Do this quietly and consistently. It costs almost nothing. The protection it provides is significant. Move number 3. Build your narrative infrastructure before you need it. The narrator's power depends on you leaving the description of your work to someone else. Close that gap. After every significant contribution, create a brief, factual record and email to your manager confirming what was completed and what the outcome was, a summary shared with relevant stakeholders, a note in a meeting where the project is discussed that connects the outcome to your specific contribution. Not extensively, not in a way that reads as credit claiming, just clearly enough that the record exists and has your name attached to it. You are not competing with the narrator. You are simply ensuring that the description of your work doesn't have to be constructed entirely by someone else. Protect your narrative the way you protect your deliverables, consistently, quietly, before the moment you need it. There is something worth sitting with at the end of all this. Most people who operate the way this video describes are not cartoonish villains. They are people who looked at the system around them, identified what it actually rewards, and built their behavior around those rewards. The system rewarded perception management over contribution. It rewarded narrative control over operational excellence. It rewarded strategic warmth over honest relationships. And they adapted. That is not an excuse, but it is an explanation. And the explanation matters because it means the real problem is not the individual operator, it is the environment that made operating more viable than performing. You cannot fix that environment by identifying every person inside it who has learned to exploit it. What you can do is become harder to exploit, more deliberate about what you share and with whom, more present in the construction of your own narrative, more fluent in the patterns that would otherwise stay invisible until they've done their work. Most people learn to see these patterns only after they've already been used against them. You are seeing them now. The person who cannot be read is very difficult to use. That is what you are building, and it starts with knowing what you are looking at. I'm Zara. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.